Pristaya Bhutale Udas Jayadvaita Swami Tinamine Jayadvaita Vedam Vande Vinitam Vyasa Sadgunam Bhakti Vedanta Sevarate Rantanami Sampadakam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Puramansu Paripraj Akacharya Shtotra Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Raj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Mukund Radha Kundigiri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamana Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Welcome to all. Thank you so much for also thanks to Vidas Prabhu, and we're broadcasting from Denver, Colorado, ISKCON, and we're at Chaitanya Charitamrta, Adi Leela 156. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Come in. You are welcome.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, come on. We have some live men here tonight. And I should mention, following in the footsteps of Kendra Prabhu, that today is February 10th, 2022. Yeah, sit comfortably. Are you okay? We have a chair. Would you rather have a chair? I think you would. There's a chair next door.
You already offered me, but
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. Let's see. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Dadhati Shapadamtikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raganatan Vitam Stamsadiham Sadvaitam Savatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lolita Sri Vishakan Vitamstra. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vancha Kolpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhopyevacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Prabhu, could you just pull this curtain?
sure.
This one here.
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah, that's a little better. So we're reading about, from the first chapter of Adi Leela, about the role of the spiritual master, both the initiating spiritual master and the instructing spiritual master. In this section, Kaviraj Goswami has been talking about the instructing spiritual master, and as part of his evidence, part of unfolding his explanation, he quotes from the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 9th chapter, for essential verses. And Srila Prabhupada, in his purports, doesn't talk about the verses in relationship to the argument that Kaviraj Goswami is making. He comments directly on the meaning of the verses themselves. So that's what we've been getting in the 3 verses that we've covered so far, and tonight, the 4th verse. So let us jump in. Etavadeva jigyasyam tatvajnana sunatmanaha anvaya vyatirekabhyam yatsyat sarvatra sarvada. Come on in. Hare Krishna, welcome.
Still on my call, right?
Still on your call, that's fine. I should mention for the benefit of those here that our convention is that if you have any questions or comments, feel free to jump in. Okay. A person interested in transcendental knowledge must therefore always directly and indirectly inquire about it to know the absolute truth. Jigyasyam tattva jigyasuna atmanha. The seriously inquisitive student wants to know about the absolute truth, tattva, which is the real subject for inquiry, jigyasya. And anvaya vyatirekavyam, directly and indirectly, he should inquire about this. We'll find out more about what directly and indirectly means as we read on. Yat syat sarvatra sarvada. Sarvatra means.
So is that directly and indirectly connected to the first verse of Bhagavatam, where that
Yes.
principle is mentioned also?
Yeah. We'll come to directly and indirectly. Sarvatra and sarvada means everywhere and always. This is what we should be asking about. Purport: those who are serious about the knowledge of the transcendental world, which is far beyond the material cosmic creation, must approach a bona fide spiritual master to learn the science both directly and indirectly. So tad vigyanartam sa gurum eva abhigachet. If one seriously wants to understand the science of the absolute truth, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master and inquire from him. And to learn the science both directly and indirectly. One must learn both the means to approach the desired destination and the hindrances to such progress. Well, that's how, in this purport, Srila Prabhupada glosses directly and indirectly. How do we get there and what's holding us back? So directly and indirectly. Or one might say that these inquiring directly about Krishna and his spiritual energy, and indirectly Krishna in relationship to the material powers.
Would you also maybe say subconsciously and consciously?
There's so many indirectly and indirectly,
Yeah.
consciously and subconsciously. By direct statements and inferential, there are many directly and indirectly. Yeah, there's so many. Every word of Bhagavatam has so many meanings, or so many shades of meaning, so many implications and nuances. But here Prabhupada says directly how to get there, and indirectly what's holding me back. The spiritual master, so and this now is quite in relationship to what Kaviraj Goswami has been discussing, the relationship of the role of the spiritual master. The spiritual master knows how to regulate the habits of a neophyte disciple. And therefore, a serious student must learn the science in all its aspects from him. Before we delve deep into the science, we have to learn to lead a regulated life, strictly following 4 regulative principles, regularly chanting the holy name of the Lord, following a program of daily sadhana, rising early in the morning and performing so many spiritual duties, taking prasadam, associating with devotees, hearing from Shastra, So all of these things the spiritual master trains the disciple in, and much more. So in all its aspects, sarvatra, sarvada, one has to learn the science of Krishna under the guidance of a bona fide guru. Now, something, I see the whole purport is posted here. Okay. Let's see. Okay, good. There are different grades and standards of prosperity. The standard of comfort and happiness conceived by a common man engaged in material labor is the lowest grade of happiness, for it is in relationship with the body. And we see that people are just working hard for food, for sex, for having a place to sleep. Yes. Security. So that's the lowest grade of happiness, just to be happy to be alive and getting the basic physical wants satisfied. The highest standard of such bodily comfort is achieved by a fruitive worker who by pious activities reaches the plane of heaven, or the kingdom of the creative gods with their delegated powers. So these are the karmis. The karmis, the lowest karmis are just working. That's their idea of how to get their physical wants satisfied. And then the pious worshippers of the demigods perform activities to be promoted to the heavenly planets for greater enjoyment. Or even in other traditions, people have the idea that if I'm good, I'll go to heaven. So they try to lead a good life with the idea that there'll be more of the same, but much better. It'll be on a heavenly platform. But the conception of comfortable life in heaven is insignificant in comparison to the happiness enjoyed in the impersonal Brahma. So we talked about that last night, the Brahma Sokya, the Brahma Sukha, the happiness of being situated on the Brahmabhuta platform. Brahmabhuta Prasanatma Nashochati Nakanchati Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Bhaktim. So the impersonal realization, first of all, realization that I'm spirit, and then for the mental speculators, generally identification with the Supreme Spirit. That Aham Brahmasmi, I'm spirit, and therefore they take that and run with it and conclude that they're identical with God in all respects, which of course is their mistake. So here, the material happiness of heaven is considered insignificant compared to the spiritual happiness of the impersonal Brahma. And this Brahmananda, spiritual happiness, spiritual bliss derived from impersonal Brahma, is like the water in the hoofprint of a calf compared to the ocean of love of Godhead. In the third canto elsewhere, it said that the materialists are pitied by the pitiable. They're pitied by the pitiable. The impersonalists who've achieved spiritual realization pity the poor karmis who are just focused on bodily wants and desires. And the devotees pity the impersonalists because they're bereft of love of Krishna and the relationship with Krishna. When one develops pure love for the Lord, he derives an ocean of transcendental happiness from the association of the personality of Godhead. To qualify oneself to reach this stage of life is the highest perfection, directly associated with the personality of Godhead. One should try to purchase a ticket to go back home, back to Godhead. The price of such a ticket is one's intense desire for it, lobha, which is not easily awakened, even if one continuously performs pious activities for thousands of lives. All mundane relationships are sure to be broken in the course of time. But once one establishes a relationship with the personality of Godhead in a particular rasa, it is never to be broken, even after the annihilation of the material world. So now, Srila Prabhupada is going to discuss these relationships with the Lord gradually. One should understand through the transparent medium of the spiritual master that the Supreme Lord exists everywhere in his transcendental spiritual nature, and that the living entity's relationship with the Lord are directly and indirectly existing everywhere, even in this material world. So there again is anvayavyatareka, directly and indirectly. Our relationship with Krishna at the moment is experienced indirectly. Whatever we're experiencing in this material world, some relationship as friends or parent and child, lover and beloved, is a reflection of the relationship with Krishna. It's indirectly it's love of Krishna, but it's misdirected towards some temporary object. So indirectly and directly, one can love Krishna directly. In the spiritual world, there are 5 kinds of relationships with the Supreme Lord: Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. The perverted reflections of these rasas are found in the material world. Land, home, furniture, and other inert material objects are related in Shanta, or the neutral and silent sense. So I'm sitting on this chair, and the chair is holding me up. So there's a relationship, but the chair is not active in that relationship. The relationship is that I'll sit and the chair will hold me. So Shanta, the chair is in a neutral relationship. It doesn't feel that, and is my love increasing? Is my love being reciprocated? It's just neutral, quiet. So land, home, furniture, other inert material objects, they're related in the neutral, silent sense, whereas servants work in the dasya relationship. Is my boss pleased? Does he like my work? The reciprocation between friends is called sakya. The affection of a parent for a child is known as vatsalya, and the affairs of conjugal love constitute madhurya. These 5 relationships in the material world are distorted reflections of the original pure sentiments, which should be understood and perfected in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. And what we see here is just the distorted reflection of these relationships, which a seriously inquisitive person should try to reach and perfect. Tulsi Priya.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I was just thinking about what you were saying about the Shanta Ras and that it's, kind of passive, and I forget what the other word used was, neutral. But I have read things and heard things, like for instance, when Mother Yashoda was feeding baby Krishna, and I heard that the pot of milk was not happy to be neglected by Mother Yashoda, so it boiled over so that she would leave Krishna aside and attend to the pot of milk boiling on the stove. There's also in Nectar of Devotion, I briefly looked this up. It says one gopi informed Krishna that when Srimati Radharani was singing about his glories, she enchanted all of her friends in such a way that they became stone-like and dull. At the same time, the nearby stones began to melt away in ecstatic love. So it seems like these are sort of like, emotional reactions that inanimate, or well, they're not inanimate, but that neutral devotees, or that are ostensibly in neutral rasa, are having these emotional reactions to various things going on in the pastimes.
Yeah, it does seem that way. There's a few places where that's mentioned, that when Krishna plays his flute, the inert living entities start moving, and the moving living entities become inert. So then it appears to be more than just neutral. Some aspect of something more is present. Yeah. Or as we discussed the other night, when the gopis are talking about such things, it may also be a reflection of their love, that they're seeing how all these living beings are actively engaged in loving dealings with Krishna. But we know, for instance, that Govardhan, which is a hill, is certainly in a very active relationship, Haridasa Varga. He's the best of the servants of Krishna, although he takes the form of a hill, which you say, well, a hill is inert, but not this hill. He's making all sorts of arrangements for Krishna and Balaram and their cows, and providing all sorts of facilities and so on. So, although you might think Shanta, but Haridasa Varya.
Mars.
Yes.
I was just thinking, it seems a little strange that any living entity, who we know from the Caitanya Caritamrta that, Jivara Swarupa Hoy Krishna and Nityadas, every living entity is always going to be a servant of Krishna. The word das is used. So it seems like strange to me that a living entity could be situated eternally in a relationship with Krishna that was indirect, yet at the same time, they are situated as a pure devotee. And
well, Shanta's not indirect. Shanta's direct, but Shanta's quiet. It's not active the way that Dasya and the other relationships are. But it's not indirect. Indirect is like here, the furniture in the material world is indirect, because it's just in relationship to some temporary physical arrangement. Even the conjugal love in this material world is indirect, because it's not connected to Krishna directly. But the Shanta in the spiritual world is one of the direct relationships.
Well, I guess I'm just saying it makes sense to me that, the stones will melt and, things like that will happen, because it seems strange that a living entity would not ever express any reciprocation or desire to serve Krishna, even in forms that are apparently inanimate. And so, it just makes me wonder if that seed of Dasya Ras, at least some tinge of it, is present in every living entity, even those who are primarily situated in Shanta Ras.
Yeah, I tend to think that way, but I don't have authority for you, so I don't want to come out and say anything. I should say also, though, that even if the inert living beings are say melting or so on. That's not direct service. That's not direct service to melt or to shiver or to, that means they're experiencing transcendental ecstasy, but it doesn't mean that it's come to the point of active service.
What about the cows and all the animals in Vrindavan? Are they
We generally hear that they're in Shantaras. Generally, that's what we hear. Is that all right?
Well, for the where there was the birds, right? They carry the messages.
There, and you're getting active service, aren't we? This Shanta is just on the verge of active service. Active service may be there. Okay, we have 2 questions. Vijay Krishna, it seems that if I'm not serious enough, it will not be possible for me to approach a bona fide spiritual master. What is it that I need to do in order to become serious? Is it that favorable association is a key factor? Yes. Sadhu Sangha, Lavamatra, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastre Koi. Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhyo. All the Shastras are saying again and again, just associate with devotees. Krishna Bhakti Mool, Sadhu Sangha. The root cause for Krishna Bhakti is the association of devotees. So if we want to be serious, then yes, by all means, associate with devotees, associate with devotees. Saraswati says, we understand that the bona fide Vaishnava Sampradaya is more concentrated in Vatsalya Bhav, like the Vallabhacharya Sampradaya, more concentrated than Sakya. More concentrated, yes, you can say. There's a hierarchy, although every relationship is perfect. The Dasya is considered higher than Shanta, the Vatsalya higher than Dasya, the Sakya higher than Dasya, the Vatsalya higher than Shatya, and Madhurya higher than Vatsalya. Yes. In the material world, the perverted rasas bring frustration. Friendship is frustrated, parental relationships bring pain. The conjugal relationships are full of trouble. If these rasas are reestablished with Lord Krishna, the result is eternal, blissful life. From this and the preceding 3 verses of the Caitanya Caritamrta, which have been selected from Srimad Bhagavatam, the missionary activities of Lord Chaitanya can be understood. Srimad Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses, which are summarized in the 4 verses beginning with Aham Mevasa Agre, 53, and concluding with Yat Syat Sarvatra Sarvada, 56. Now Srila Prabhupada is going to give a short summary of what these verses are about. But meanwhile, things have come up again in the chat box. Let's see what's come up here. This verse about pitiable by the pitiable has been quoted 3.5.14, and then what we're reading. And Haridas says, a poet praises Shantaras, indirect. The heart can think of no devotion greater than being shore to ocean, holding the curve of one position, counting an endless repetition. Robert Frost. The heart can think of no devotion greater than being shore to ocean, holding the curve of one's position, counting an endless repetition. Yeah, that's like nice, Shantaras. Of course, the heart could think of something higher than Shantaras, and that would be the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So now we're going to get a very brief synopsis of these 4 verses. In the first of these verses, 53, the transcendental nature of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is explained. Aham mevasam evagre. The second verse, 54, further explains that the Lord is detached from the workings of the material energy, Maya. The living entities, although parts and parcels of Lord Krishna, are controlled, prone to be controlled by the external energy. Therefore, although they are spiritual, in the material world they are encased in bodies of material energy. The eternal relationship of the living entities with the Supreme Lord is explained in that verse. The next verse, 55, instructs that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable energies, is simultaneously one with and different from the living entities and the material energy. The knowledge is called Achintya Bheda Bhed Tattva. When an individual living entity surrenders to the Supreme Lord, Krishna, he can then develop natural, transcendental love for him. This surrendering process should be the primary concern of a human being. Jigyasya meva. The main thing for us to inquire about, how can I revive my eternal transcendental love for Krishna? How can I move forward in this surrendering process? Yeah. The next verse, 55, instructs that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable energies, is simultaneously one with and different from the living entities and the material energy. This knowledge is called Achintya Bheda Bhed Tattva. When an individual living entity surrenders to the Supreme Lord, Krishna, he can then develop natural transcendental love for him. This surrendering process should be the primary concern of a human being. Now, in the next verse, 56, it is said that a conditioned soul must ultimately approach a bona fide spiritual master and try to understand perfectly the material and spiritual worlds and his own existential position. So again, anvaya vyatirekabhya. Try to understand the material world, and we should try to understand our own eternal position in relationship to Krishna. Here the words Anvaya Vyatireka, directly and indirectly, suggests that one must learn the process of devotional service in its two aspects. One must directly execute the process of devotional service and indirectly avoid the impediments to progress. And we find that in the next. Could you bring me some water? We find this in Nectar of Devotion. There, what is that? Vidhi and Nishad. Vidhi means things we must do. Chant 16 rounds, rise early in the morning, attend the Mangalarti, read Srimad Bhagavatam, associate with devotees. Vidhi, these are things we're enjoined to do. And Nishad means forbidden, things we shouldn't do. No gambling, no intoxicants, no meat eating, no illicit sex. Nishad. Nishad means forbidden. So that's another meaning of directly and indirectly. Directly, we should do the things that will bring us closer to Krishna, and indirectly give up the things that will hold us back. What is that? Anakulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjana. Things that will help us in our cultivation of Krishna consciousness, we should accept. And the things that will hold us back, pratikul, things that are opposing, we should give up. So that's also direct and indirect. Directly, we want to hear, we want to chant, we want to accept these different means of developing our, thank you, dormant love for Krishna. And then indirectly, get free from these unwanted things that will hold us back. So both things are needed, not just, all the wonderful things you can do to cultivate Krishna consciousness, but also we need to hear about the things that we shouldn't do, things that will hold us back. That's one of the problems of the sahajas. They don't like to hear about the things you're not supposed to do. They do them. And therefore they're mixing transcendence with the mud of material sense gratification. Okay. Are there some more? Okay, question number 2 from Vijay Krishna Prabhu. Related to the hindrances to spiritual progress, why is it that some spiritualists disguise themselves with the purpose of avoiding recognition? In what measure could fame and recognition be there hindering the progress of a transcendentalist? As far as I know, Srila Prabhupada never went for the use of such kind of strategy. To what extent, is that what it says? Why is it that some transcendentalists avoid recognition? Yes, they, out of their humility, that's one thing. They don't think that we're great devotees, nor do they want to be known as great devotees. This is one of the impediments to think that, to be, what is that? Tanam Janam Sundari, that I'll get money, I'll get fame, I'll get, the women will all go woo, woo, woo. So Madhavendra Puri, when the Pujari called out in the marketplace, if Madhavendra Puri is here, you're the most fortunate person. Gopinath has stolen the sweet rice for you. Madhavendra Puri accepted the sweet rice and then left town because he knew everybody would be saying, "Oh, Madhavendra Puri, the great Madhavendra Puri." They want his darshan. They want to get the dust from his feet. They'd be all talking about how great. So he didn't want that. So he left. He quietly left. So recognizing the intoxicating nature of praise by others, the transcendentalists sometimes remain covered. Sometimes they remain covered. Especially those who are bhajananandis, they don't want to be related to the public. They want to do their bhajan undisturbed. Or sometimes there's some other reason that, just like John Bharat, he was actually a highly realized soul, but he'd been attracted in a previous life to a deer and gone off track. So he didn't want something like that to happen again. So he appeared just like a fool externally, although actually he was the most exalted person. But yes.
I have to go attend them.
You have to go. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Marsh. Hare Krishna.
Tomorrow we have Srimad Bhagavatam class at the same time. You're welcome.
At the same time as normally me, or here?
Here at 5 o'clock again. 5 in the evening. Yes.
Evening. And then we'll be fortunate to hear your Bhagavatam class in the morning tomorrow too, right?
I don't know.
Certainly hope so.
Let's see. I've been hiding out in the mornings a little bit, but maybe we'll do something.
Okay, Marsh.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jai. Shiva. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada took really an opposite. Yes, Sharanagati says, well, let's see, there's several comments here. Shai Gaurasundra says, Bhukti Anukul Matra, Karjar Svikar, Pratikul Pava Varjan Adhikar. Yeah, he accepts things favorable and he rejects things unfavorable. And Sharanagati says spiritual self-preservation, that they remained in. And Prabhin remarks, our Srila Prabhupada wanted himself recognized by the society. Yes, for their own good. Prabhupada wanted to spread Krishna consciousness. So he accepted or even wanted recognition, not for his own sake, but for the prestige of the Krishna consciousness movement. But we see that really he wanted more recognition for Krishna. There are so many spiritual movements where everybody remembers the name of the guru, but no one has any idea what he taught. Nobody has any idea what he taught, or they know what he taught, but it was had no connection with Krishna. So uniquely almost, Srila Prabhupada's society is really focused on Krishna, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And Prabhupada, yes, he wanted his position recognized or respected, but not that he wanted at the expense of giving our attention and love to Krishna. He didn't want it to be all about himself. He wanted it to be about Krishna. So many temples, the focus of worship is Radha Krishna, Gaur Nitai, Jagannath, Krishna Balaram. And in some instances, Prabhupada was there really only in Vrindavan. But along with Krishna Balaram, there's some, anyway, there are other things. But the point is that really Prabhupada wanted us and wanted the world to recognize Krishna. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, that book. Everything directed toward Krishna. So it's not that he was looking for name and fame like the materialistic person, but to the extent that he saw it necessary or helpful for spreading Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada accepted or even to some extent invited or sought recognition. He's pleased, for example, when scholars would praise his books and so on. But even then, the subject of the books is Krishna. I think at one point, Satsuru Maharaj wanted to interview Srila Prabhupada for, a biography. And Prabhupada sort of agreed, but then he thought, well, and he didn't. He dropped it. That, why should it be about me? And he certainly never had the idea of writing an autobiography. Yes.
I was just thinking about the fact that Srila Prabhupada never told his disciples in the beginning that he's the spiritual master.
In the beginning, Prabhupada never told the devotees that he's the spiritual master. How do you mean?
Well, wouldn't he say that one should surrender to a spiritual master, but that he would never directly say to anyone that I'm the one you should surrender to?
That
I'm the one you should surrender to?
No, he told them.
Oh.
I mean, there are two things. One is that Prabhupada is giving an instruction about the spiritual master. Those instructions are timeless. They apply to any spiritual master. It's not only him. So it wasn't just that code, surrender to a spiritual master, that is to me. Because now, after Prabhupada's departure, we're still talking about these same instructions, surrender to a spiritual master. But it doesn't mean that I directly approach Srila Prabhupada, please initiate me. So Prabhupada was teaching a timeless science. And at the same time, he did train the devotees, that he did initiate them, he did teach them how to respect him as their spiritual master. He wasn't so shy that no, I'm not really a spiritual. No, I'm also clear about it. That he was clear about it, that I'm taking this role as spiritual master.
Okay, that clears that up.
Tulsi Priya says, because he had to establish the movement, and he was the proper representative to establish it. If he left a void with regard to a face to represent the movement, someone else less qualified might have tried to fill it. Yes, she founder Acharya. That means setting the standard. It's not that he was just one of the boys, or that he was just a humble soul who knew something about Krishna, but he wanted to establish that, yes, I'm the head of the institution. The head of the institution has to be given some respect. It's not that Srila Prabhupada was after respect. He thrived on respect. What, to be respected by a group of hippies, what is that? But he had to teach the disciples how to serve Krishna. And this is how one begins. Adau Guru Padashraya. Saddharma Prijta. One has to approach the bona fide spiritual master, Tadvidi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevya. One has to ask him questions, one has to render service, one has to surrender. So Prabhupada had to teach the devotees how to do that. Early in the movement, one of my godbrothers, Gargamuni, one of the earliest devotees, said to Srila Prabhupada that Prabhupada or Swamiji, should we bow down to you even if we don't feel anything? That was the early days. Prabhupada said yes. Because that's training. You may feel something or not feel something, but this is the duty of the disciple to respect the spiritual master. There's certain ways to do that, bowing down and so on. So yes, you should do that. Not because I'm after respect from you, but because this is the right training for the disciple. So as the Acharya and founder Acharya of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada had to do these things. The Saraswati says, why does a guru accept a disciple who has nothing to recommend him? It seems a guru can see potential in a disciple when that disciple feels that he doesn't have much potential. Yeah, not that nothing to recommend him, but the spiritual master, he sees something. Some spark of Krishna consciousness is there. All right, fan it. Fan it. It may be strong, it may be weak, but fan it. That's the business of a preacher, business of a spiritual master. There's some spark of Krishna consciousness. All right, fan it. Some hope. Tulsi Priya says, I humbly encourage everyone who hasn't yet done so to read the book Srila Prabhupada, Founder Acharya of ISKCON, available in PDF form at the address given in the chat box online. Yes, Tulsi Priya.
Hi, Krishna. I left my hand up. Yeah, if anybody wants to find that book, it's called founderacharya.com is the website.
Okay.
Acharya spelled with an H.
Okay. Well, we are 2 minutes shy of 8 o'clock, which is basically 8 o'clock. So I think we can end here.
Wait, let me get my glasses. Where's my glasses in my head? Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. And tomorrow is Ekadasi in many parts of the world, so we wish you a Krishna conscious Ekadasi.
Bye.